Starting. All right, so that's all started. And then just a reminder, this is the Dallas-Fort Worth DFW Power BI user group. We focus on things that are Power BI and Fabric. We meet monthly on the first Tuesday of every month. We also have a weekly meeting that we call Lunchbox, that is just an open discussion. You can find that on the same meetup site that you found this meeting, so hopefully you'll join us there. And with that, Jay, I'm going to turn off my camera and mute everybody and let you go at it.
Cool. Well, thanks for the intro, Kevin. And thanks everybody for making time out of your busy day to join this meeting. And yeah, really appreciate you being there. So I am Jeroen. I go by Jay for everybody that doesn't speak any Dutch on the call, which I'm going to take out a guess that is going to be the most of you. So you might have seen my ugly mug before on social media or in person at any of the conferences on our blog. So I'm a principal program manager, product manager on the Power BI team, and I focus mostly on this programming language that everybody likes to hate, which is DAX. And if you ever want to reach out to me and give me feedback or chat about what you like and what you don't like about Power BI, here's my contact vectors. There's my email address. I'm also on LinkedIn. I am on social media, as I mentioned. I am on Blue Sky. I am no longer on Twitter or X because Twitter is my ex social media. If you see what I did there. And so don't find me there, but please find me somewhere else. Reddit is also something that I actively use as well. So, and today the topic is going to be about, as I mentioned, about DAX, the programming language that you all love to hate, including myself. And I will also have to struggle a little bit. You can see me glancing over to the other side. I'm preparing my demo machine, who completely gave up on me just seconds ago. So if I'm not looking at the camera for a while, but still talking, I'm trying to make that thing work over here. And then I'll switch over once we get to the demo, hopefully to switch over from slides back into that one to just get the demo going a little later in this talk. So in the meantime, feel free to use the chat for anything, any questions, any concerns, anything I can help answer. I'll try to monitor that as well. And I also might actually ask you to unmute if there's a specific question I need a little bit more detail on. So with that, let's get into it. So we're going to talk about this programming language called DAX that has been around for a while, but is still very much evolving and being built. And it's something that we're still working on. Even though it has been around since about 2009, it debuted there in Power Pivot in Excel in 2010. Maybe show of hands who was around using that at that time. Please use the raise your hand feature if it's enabled. There we go. So I was there. A couple more. It's okay. It's okay. So yeah, I mean, this has been around for since that time already. Then we got in 2012. We got SSAS Tabular, which is SQL Server Analysis Tabular, which is actually the foundation under Power BI. It was the evolution of Power Pivot that started as a data model inside of Excel, and it kind of like went into a server product this way, and it eventually led to the rise of Power BI, which this year is 10 years ago. So now we're talking 2015. So in 23 days from now, Power BI will actually turn 10 years old. There's a couple of surprises already in the last release build. If you start it, you'll see this little animation which walks you through all the icons that we used to have for our application, as well as our dear friend Henry the Owl makes an appearance. And there's a couple of cool things that we won't spoil here, but a couple of cool things that are coming your way to just mark this 10-year anniversary for Power BI. And then we haven't, we have not done nothing with DAX in the 10 years, of course. So in 2020, a very important thing happened is that I joined the team. So from there, you can see things improving on DAX. No, just kidding, of course. But I joined the team in 2020, and one of the first things I did is I added 49 financial functions. And also we previewed the composite models on semantic models, which was by then called Direct Query for Power BI datasets and Azure Analysis Services, which I think is the longest name of a preview feature ever. And when we GA'd that, when we made that generally available, I think it was in December of 2022, I decided to just call it composite models because that made way more sense. And then in 2022, we also developed the window functions, which were the foundation under what would come later, which is the visual calcs, which is still in preview, that we launched in February of 2024. 2023 saw the info functions, which is a whole slew of functions that give you more detail about what is happening in your data model. The info X functions, so info.measures, info.tables, info.columns, info.relationships. You can go on and on and on. So we added those. We also have the DAX query view apart from visual calcs, the DAX query view in 2024. And so far in 2025, this year, we have introduced the Tyndall view, and we have also built a copilot that can generate DAX for you, either in the DAX query view as well as in when you're asking data questions to your data model. So that is where we are now. And in case you forgot, we are in 2025. So that's why I added the "you are here" little target there. But we're not done. There's more coming that we're planning to ship this year still, even though we're, well, exactly halfway through. On the dot today, actually. So what can we look forward to for the rest of 2025? And this is very much up in the air. I am hopeful. I'm planning to ship all of this in 2025, but don't come knocking on my door if this slips to 2026. But you know how Microsoft sometimes operates, but we're targeting 2025 to at least get this into your hands. So what we can share today of what is coming is two, I think, very interesting and very cool features. One is custom calendars that I want to talk about today. And the other one is DAX user-defined functions. So those are the two big topics for today to cover. And hopefully, if my machine keeps operating, we might actually get a demo of both. So let's see how it goes. Cool. So first off, custom calendars. Let's talk about those. Calendars. Seems simple, right? We kind of all agree there's a certain way of dividing time, right? Like, we all use the Gregorian calendar. Do we all have to really have the same idea of how we divide time? Let's see. Let's do a quick poll. I know where most of us are probably in the US, although I've thought of somebody from Western Australia, Vicky. So let's see. I mean, when does the week start? Is that Monday? Is that Sunday? Is that Saturday for you? What do you think? When does a week start? Depends on the context you're in, depends on where you're from in the world. But I think many people will say either Monday or Sunday. But for example, if you're from Israel, you might actually pick Saturday. So it really depends on the scenario you're in. So even already on something as simple as when does the week start, we don't agree. And some people even in the chat are saying, well, it depends on the context, right? Either Sunday or Monday. Okay, so when does the year start? Is that January 1st, as the Gregorian calendar dictates? Or is that something else? In fact, Happy New Year to all Microsoft employees here on the call, because it is our first day of our new fiscal year. So if you ask this in a Microsoft context, then I would answer the 1st of July. That's where the year starts. Gregorian calendar says the 1st of January. So then, is there maybe a day? Is it always the first Monday of January that your year starts, or is it maybe, can that vary over the years? The Gregorian calendar moves around all the time. It might be the 1st of January might be a Tuesday next year, and it might be a Wednesday the year after. So it's always all over the place. So we don't even agree on these basic things about time. So not all calendars are equal. And I'm just talking about Gregorian or shifted Gregorian calendars here, which means there's either a Gregorian calendar or a fiscal calendar that still follows the idea of a Gregorian calendar with like 12 months between 28 and 31 days. It's just shifted, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more types of calendars out there. How about a retail calendar, which follows a 4-4-5 pattern, which means a month, the year is split up in months, and the months are either 4 weeks or 5 weeks long, and they repeat themselves in patterns of a month of 4 weeks, a month of 4 weeks, a month of 5 weeks, or a month of 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, or 4-5-4. So these are called 4-4-5, 5-4-4, 4-5-4 calendars. So this one, for example, starts in 2024. It actually started, the first day was a Sunday, and it was the 28th of January. And the month was called February. Still with me? How is this not confusing, right? And okay, how about this one? This one is actually pretty cool. This is the fixed calendar, or the international fixed calendar, which actually divides the year up in days in such a way that every date is still exactly on the same date. So if you were born on April 9th, like I am, my mother always told me that was a Saturday. She was wrong according to the international fixed calendar. Thank you, Mom. It was actually a Tuesday, and it always will be a Tuesday, even though in a Gregorian calendar, April 9th moves around all the time. With the international fixed calendar, it will always be the exact day. How did they do that? They added a 13th month. Between June and July, there's a month called Sol, which is a 13th month that allows them to divide the year up in very equal slices. Oh, and they also add in a leap day just to cover up the tracks, and a year day, which is not part of any week or month. So if you happen to use all of this, Gregorian calendars are not the way you think. It might actually be a Tuesday, a Monday, sorry, Daryl. There's other shifted calendars like this, which like kind of work differently. We have Chinese calendars that might actually define 10 months or 8 months or 16 or 24. We can go on and on and on and on. Now, the problem is Power BI really only supports Gregorian calendars or shifted Gregorian calendars, nothing else. So if you are in a business or you are in a space where you need to use any other calendar, you're out of luck. It's not going to happen. You will not be able to use Power BI to perform time intelligence calculations against your calendar. If you have to do week-based calculations, you already are in a lot of trouble, because we don't have a way to do weekdays calculations. We don't support any calendar that doesn't follow this Gregorian kind of arbitrary, honestly, kind of arbitrary pattern. We don't support any of that. And if you think I'm crazy, look it up. The international fixed calendar was actually in use at Kodak between, what was it? It was, I don't know exactly when it was, but it was somewhere between the 70s and the 90s, I think, last century, that they actually used the fixed calendar with 13 months. That was their standard way of operating. So we are finally, as Power BI, getting around to doing this. So what are we solving? Well, first of all, time intelligence is the most common scenario we see. About 40% of all queries include some kind of time intelligence. It might either be using our built-in functions. It might just be a very simple date add. It might be not using any built-in functions, anything. But anything related to subtracting dates or calculating totals or averages over time, we count as time intelligence functions. So 40% of all queries include that. And oh, by the way, this does not count the custom TI. But customers are struggling with non-Gregorian calendars. As I said, like, we only support Gregorian or shifted Gregorian calendars, no week-based calendars, no 28 months in a year kind of calendars. And then most of our customers already have a date table. If you don't have one, it's easy to grab one. You can either generate one using Power Query or DAX, or load one from Excel or from your source. However you want to do it, most people find their way around to create a date table for themselves. We should, of course, make that easier. Maybe ship one built in, or allow you to generate one that meets your needs, but that is not in scope of what we're building here. So the second problem is that we see a lot of models coming in that are not semantic models. They are denormalized models, which means they are more in the data lake kind of fashion, that don't really follow this fact and dimension thinking that we have today in semantic models. We don't really support any of that with our time intelligence functions, because you have to have a continuous, unique set of dates to even be able to do any time intelligence with Power BI. Your total year-to-date function will completely crash and burn if you give it dates with gaps or repeated dates values. It will just not accept it. It assumes you have done the due diligence of putting in that date table and doing all the work. And then we don't have a UI-driven way of handling all of this. And then performance of time intelligence is also pretty awful at some point. It always, any calculation that you do is always performed on the day level. So we always calculate back to the lowest level of data to the day level, instead of just calculating something on the year or the quarter or the month level where we should have been calculating something. Oh, and by the way, the word time intelligence is a weird name because we actually don't do anything time intelligence. We do day intelligence at the max. We never do any within the day. Anyway, that's just a sidetrack. Cool. So what are we building? Well, with custom calendars, we are building what we call metadata-driven calendar definition that allows you to specify how you want us to interpret your year. So you tell us exactly, hey, here's a table that divides the year up in slices, and this column represents what I call the month number. This column represents what I call the quarter number. This column represents what I call the semester number or the year number or the week number. And you basically tell us this is the column, and then we don't care anymore. When you then say, let's do a total year to date or a total quarter to date, we are going to look at whatever the column is that you gave us and perform the calculation over that. So it's up to you to then divide the year in however you see fit. We stop making assumptions that you're using a Gregorian calendar that stretches months between 28 to 31 days. All of that is gone. With a custom calendar, you can absolutely define 1 quarter a year, 1 month a year, 150 weeks a year. If you want to, you can. It's up to you. So it's complete freedom. You have to put in a little bit of work, but you get the complete freedom to do all the calculations that you want. We are also then introducing week-based time intelligence functions that some already have seen, the total week to date, which is just an expansion of the total quarter to date and month to date and year to date function. We have a total week to date. We also have same period last week or date add with a week shift. All of that we're doing as well. So we're adding week as a first-class citizen next to quarter, month, and year. So we're not getting rid of our existing time intelligence functions. Existing time intelligence functions will just happily continue to work. But if you want to onboard onto custom calendars for the flexibility and performance benefits, you just make a small change to how you call these functions, and then you will work with calendars. So what do we have here today now? You have now a calendar creation UI that we're shipping very shortly that allows you to create any calendar on any table. So you can define multiple calendars in a table. You'll see that in the demo. We also have, as I mentioned, new time intelligence functions for week-based calculations. And you can use these kind of functions everywhere where you can use DAX. Now, there's one thing that I have to explain, which is what we call natural versus non-natural versus time-related. This will become very, very interesting and very important once you start working with these. So what we call a natural time category is something that is enough to uniquely identify the period. For example, month of year is enough to identify exactly which month we're talking about because we assume it contains something like July 2025. Quarter of year is enough to uniquely identify which quarter we're talking about because it might be something like Q3 2025 or 2025 Q3. So it allows us to uniquely say, yes, this is the exact month or exact quarter or exact year we're talking about. Non-natural time units, which follow the naming pattern of X of Y, are not enough. For example, month. I think I tripped this all up. I think it should be the other way around. That's what you get when you make a new slide deck. It should be completely the opposite. It should be anyway, I'm mixing myself up. It doesn't matter. Month number is not enough. If I say 7, you don't know which July I'm talking about, right? It might be July of this year, it might be July of last year. So you need something else as well. You need month of year plus year. So then you can tell me, oh, it's month 7 of 2025, or it's month 7 of quarter 1 of 2025. So you have to build the tree to give us the unique month and allow us to exactly pinpoint the month or quarter or day you're talking about. And then we have a third category here, which we call time related. And those are things that are not really divisions of time, like, you know, a holiday. Was this a weekend? Was this a working day? Was this maybe a religious day, some special day? Was it an orange day? Whatever, something that you want to use to do your time intelligence calculations with, but are not really time or divisions of time. We call those time related. So you can use all of those to mix and match and work with your calendars and make exactly the scenario you're looking for. So then essentially, to quote Oprah, everybody gets a calendar. And not just one, you get more than one calendar. You get much more flexibility, but with much more flexibility, you also get much more responsibility. And as previously, we only supported Gregorian and shifted Gregorian, now we're opening the floodgates and allow you to do whatever. But that also means you have to pay more attention because exactly you can do whatever. Okay, so let's see if we can actually switch to a demo. Yes.
So Kevin. A couple questions in the chat, right? And maybe you're going to cover these in the demo, or maybe that last bit was part of Jack's answer. But are you able to change the configuration of the calendar after you established a pattern?
Are you able to change the configuration
of the calendar after you? So like if you put a 445 in.
Yep.
Right. Could you even put a Chinese one in? Right. And I think your statement just before this of the multiple configurations, I think that provides Jack some of his answer. Would that be correct?
Yes. You can define however many calendars you want, and you can use all of those to your heart's content. So let me just see if you can actually see my screen now. Do you see my screen or no?
No, we don't see that one.
Okay. Let's see. Let's try that again.
Are you in under a different, okay, yeah, you're in the same ID. Yeah, that's up.
Okay, cool. Okay. Phew. Okay, so let's see.
And then let's see if you'll cover Fernando's question as well. But I think as you get into your demo, you're going to show the multiple configurations.
Yeah, we're going to see the several calendars. Absolutely. Okay.
And let me just throw Fernando's out there too and see where you're going to get to that. How do these several calendar tables fit into a star schema? I think you'll show that too here.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's exactly the first step that we're going to take, because here I have a beautiful, simple star schema, right? It's a very simple on-purpose star schema. It is a date, a sales, a customer, product, currency exchange, and a store. And there's a time intelligence calculation group over here table, but we can ignore that safely for now. So my date table is the one thing that I already have, which is a huge list. It's not very long, but it's very wide on like everything that I want to know about my date. It might be years, it might be semesters. It has a quarter of year column, a quarter of semester, month, weeks, days, holiday names, fiscal year numbers, which is a shifted Gregorian. We have, what else? Day of week for the retail 445, because, there is ISO 445, and then, of course, the US has to be different. So that's retail 445, because the US doesn't agree with ISO. So then we have 445 for retail in the US. We have 445 for ISO for the rest of the world that use a 445 calendar, 454. You can see there's a very wide date table. This, we assume, you built. And I don't assume you're going to build all of this. It's such a wide variety. You're going to use this stuff only use these the columns that actually make sense for your scenario. Okay.
Jay, let me pause you for just a second.
Yes.
I got Donald couldn't see your screen, and one other person said they couldn't. Donald left and came back. Can you maybe just give either a thumbs up or? Right, I've seen a few people. Okay, it seems like. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope so.
All right. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't widespread, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, for sure. Thanks for checking. Okay, so now we have the data model here. I'm going to zoom into my date column over here, and I can actually right-click on this date table, and I can do this on any table. So that's for your denormalized models. But for a star schema, I would recommend you have this date table. And then you right click on that table, you say calendar options. And once you do, you'll see a brand new UI that allows you to define all of the calendars on this date table. And on this one, I actually have a whole bunch of them. And I start off easy with a Gregorian calendar, and I defined all of the others. We have fiscal calendars, 445, etc., etc. I have defined all of them. So this answers the question, can you have multiple on the same table? You can. You can have multiple. The only thing what happens is you are going to use DAX to tell us which one you want to calculate with. when you perform your calculation. So let's go into edit. You give a calendar a name, and then you're going to wire up what we call the categories, the time categories, against your primary column and associated columns. So you're going to pick a category that we support. We support all of these. You can only match each category once per calendar. So you cannot have multiple categories mapped per calendar the same thing, right? So you can only define week once per calendar. And every primary column can only be associated to one category for each calendar. You can absolutely reuse columns across calendars on the same table, but within one calendar, there's only one category called year, and the primary column called year can only be used as a primary column on one category. So you wire this up by just basically saying, okay, for the year category, I'm going to pick my year column. Now, in this case, it happens to be exactly the same name. That's just because I was lazy. It doesn't have to be the same name. It's just because, with so many columns in my date table, I got confused which one to use. So I just named it very clear for myself which to map this to. But you can just call this A, B, C, and D and call it a day. That's all up to you. So the names don't have to match exactly. So you say, okay, my year is defined in the year column. My quarter is defined in quarter. My month is in month, and my date is in date. I also have associated columns, which basically means whenever I use these, which normally are labels, we will actually find the primary column and use that. So if I now use month name or the Spanish month name, or I think even the Dutch month name is in here, if I use that in my visual, it will still perform a time intelligence calculation against the month primary column. So these are just associated labels, if you will. You have a validate data thing here, so you can see if you did it right. Let me just show you one of the week-based calendars. Notice the Gregorian calendar didn't define week. This one actually defines week, so we now have a mapping for week as well, and that will come into play a little later. So we can keep going and keep going. We'll just see here's a fiscal calendar, which is just doing the same thing. Again, skips a week calculation, so it doesn't perform those, but it can do year, quarter, month, and date. This is just a shifted Gregorian. Okay, so once we have all of that, we can now start writing our measures. So here's a total quantity, which is just very simple, a total quantity sum, nothing else. Very, very basic DAX. I think somebody already pasted something like this as this is my only measure that I write these days in the chat. But this does not perform any time intelligence calculation at all. So what I want to do, so I actually want to, for example, calculate the month to date in the Gregorian calendar for this measure. What I do is I say total months to date, pass in measure, and then tell us here is the name of the calendar I want you to use. So this thing will actually use the Gregorian calendar to calculate the month to date value of total quantity. Okay, I can do that for a other calendar as well by just switching out the name. And of course, I have separate measure definitions for all of these. You can also, for example, use a calculation group to switch these calendar definitions, or use variables or context to change how which calendar you want to use here, right? So I just did that in a demo to just keep it very simple, but you don't have to have separate measures. Just use the context to do that. Now, this all works, and you can also, as I said, do a week-based calculation. There's literally now a function called week to date, which performs a week-based calculation on, in this case, total quantity against ISO 445 calendar. Okay, great. But what happens on a calendar that does not support the week-based calculation? Remember, the Gregorian calendar does not allow week-based shifts because it did not define the week-based category here. So as soon as you try that, you will see that it says, hey, you can't do this because you're trying to perform a week-based calculation against Gregorian calendar, which does not have all the categories defined. At the minimum, make sure you have the week category tagged. So we try to be very helpful and explicit about why you cannot use these calculations. Now, if I do this now, you'll see that, for example, here's a month-to-date testing example that I have here, which performs the same calculation of the month-to-date in all of the calendars that I have here, at least many of them. The retail patterns, the Gregorian calendar, I can use all of those. And if you look closely, you'll see the lines shifting ever so slightly. And that's because a couple of days belong to a different month in all of these calendars versus the Gregorian calendar. Same for week to date. You can see that as well. It changes every single period again. So this is exactly what you can do now. You can just use DAX to write these calendars, or you define those calendars once. You can either define them using the UI or using Tyndall, and then you can use DAX to decide how you want to calculate your time intelligence calculations against which calendar you're going to do that. So no more dates that you're fixed with Gregorian calendars. You can define whatever. You just tell us this is a month, this is a year, this is a quarter, and then we'll perform the calculation based on that. Cool. So that's the demo for this one. I see a couple of questions in here, Fernando. This is great in desktop. Does it work in the service as well? Yes, it doesn't work in the service as well. If we create a semantic model in a lakehouse, are we able to do this too? Yes, the answer is yes. You can absolutely do this on a semantic model in a lakehouse as well. So all of those scenarios are covered in this building block that you can just use to perform any time intelligence calculation to your heart's content. So it's not up to us anymore to put you in a little box and say, no, you have to use a Gregorian calendar. Week-based, you're good to go. 16 months, good to go. Whatever you want. Cool. So
yes. Isaac put in that he had a question. I'm going to go with Isaac because I can't pronounce the whole name there. But I don't know if you want to put. Okay, go ahead if you're off mute.
Okay, thank you. So my question was that, like, can we switch between like those different calendar dates, like let's say I have a slicer, like can we have different slicer for like different of those calendar?
Well, here you go. You can just switch them around. If this thing ever comes back to me, I can just say, hey, you know, I want this thing to be calculated against this calendar, right? So I can just perform this calendar and calculation this way. So I can switch them around as I want. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And I think Dean actually makes a great point. You can absolutely still already do this without the built-in time intelligence calculations, time intelligence functions. That's absolutely correct. The problem is those things will not perform for many of the situations that we've seen. So this just makes it way, way easier. You don't have to write all this. Well, I mean, it's only 5 lines of DAX or 7 lines of DAX, but still too complicated of a DAX for many people to use. So if you're comfortable writing this on your own without using our time intelligence, please keep doing that. That's totally okay. I'm not telling you not to do that. It's just for most of us, that is not comfortable. And you rob us from any opportunity to do optimization on your behalf. So our time intelligence calculations will now actually be smart enough and think about what kind of level you talked about, and then pre-calculate and pre-cache things and get against the month or the quarter or the year, instead of going back to the day level. With the DAX you just posted, that is all out of the window, and you rob us from any optimization potential that we might have to give you better performance. So I'm not saying it's a bad solution, Dean, but if that's what it works for you, please continue doing that. But that doesn't mean it works for everybody. Cool. So that's the custom calendars demo. Let me just go back to the screen real quick here. So we're considering more stuff in the near future for this thing. Let's see if my screen share actually comes in. Share. Okay, I hope that, yes, I think that looks better. We're considering more stuff for custom calendars. This is just a sneak peek. We're thinking about adding support for semesters, because that is something that's dearly missing from Power BI as well. We don't actually do any part of day calculation. So we don't do within hours or minutes or seconds or milliseconds. We don't do anything like that today with time intelligence. We might expand our show value as menu to work with time intelligence to more easily apply these calculations. So even to not require any DAX to be written. So we'll have a whole bunch of ideas. None of these are planned. If you care very deeply about either of these, let me know, because I need more proof that any of these are very important to build. If there's anything that you think we missed on this list, please also let me know, because this is the time to influence those decisions. But so what I showed you today is going to come to you very soon, and not Microsoft soon. It's actually very soon on your machine as a public preview. but it won't have all of these things that are here on the slide now because we're still gathering evidence if this is even something that is worthwhile implementing in this feature. So we're going to stay with the regular time intelligence with quarters and months and years and days and weeks. We're going to add weeks for sure. And we have this UI now, but all of what's on this slide is just basically up in the air if we want to actually perform that and add that onto our list. Cool. So with that, we're going to move on to the next topic. But be on the lookout for custom calendars and time intelligence coming to a Power BI desktop installation and services installation very near you very soon. And when I say soon, normally it's months ahead, but now we're literally talking very, very soon. Cool. So the next one that's a little bit longer out is user-defined functions. And user-defined functions, I need to clarify something. These are not the user data functions that you have in Fabric. I don't agree with them calling those UDFs for short. These are not that. These are user-defined functions in DAX. And why did we do this is because really, if you want to be a programming language, DAX is not that. DAX doesn't have a good reuse story at all. It's really hard to reuse pieces of DAX that you've crafted and worked hard on. And it's really hard to take those with you and reuse them across the model, or let alone, in the same model or across models. It's really hard to do that. You find yourself copy pasting stuff, redoing the same trick over and over and over again. And yes, we have some kind of like workaround. We do calculation groups. You can use the dirty trick of detail rows encapsulation. Talk about bad performance, by the way. We have those things, but they're not parameterized. They're not optimized for performance. Flexibility is limited. There's no real UX here that helps you discover all of this. It's limited, right? The options you have. And then if you look at any other programming language, pick one. But just to stay in the Microsoft world for a little bit, like Excel functions exist. M has had functions, custom functions that you can define and call over and over again that are parameterized. SQL, of course, has the same idea. That's where the name UDF comes from. We have had all of this, right? So DAX simply doesn't have that. Well, until today. So the idea is, if you're missing a function that we didn't build, you add it. You just add it. You just define it once and reuse it forever. And the way you write the DAX is just by simply saying define function, name, parameter, something, body. And that's it. You define the function and you reuse it wherever you want. So you're missing a certain function for your industry. You're missing that one function you cannot believe we never built. You can now add it and reuse it every single time. So what are these user-defined functions I keep jabbing about? These are reusable pieces of DAX code that are designed inside of your composite model. You designate them as a function, and then you can call them from wherever. You can call these functions once defined. You can call them from your measure, your calculated column, your visual calc, from your DAX query. These functions can return scalar or tables, so they're very flexible. They can return whatever DAX can return, and you can even parameterize those. You can set them, with that, we set them apart from calculation groups, which are not parameterized and are dependent on context. Here you can literally pass in parameters. And you define these either using DQV, the DAX query view, for just a query, or using the Tyndall view to put them back into the model. And for us, this is just the beginning of the next phase of what the DAX language is going to look like, because we already see a lot of value in the DAX UDFs, and we already see lots of stuff that we can do internally in our product with them to just, elevate and more quickly develop our features. So we're just showing that to you now as well, and we're already building some features on top of DAX UDFs, in fact, to help us expedite the development of Power BI and DAX in itself. So what have we done so far? We have a very basic, rudimentary way of defining functions and their parameters in DAX query view and in Tyndall. When I say rudimentary, that means, for example, stuff like IntelliSense is not done yet. So when we get to the demo in just a second, if there's red squigglies, that is probably, well, either me making a typo or completely accepted and normal, and it will just go through. We'll see how it goes. You can define a function using Tyndall or DQV. And once you define the function, you can use them wherever in your model. And the parameter can be table or scalar. We don't have others yet. We are thinking about for example, introducing parameter types that are called functions or constraints or types or whatever. But right now it's very basic. It's table or scalars. Okay, so with that, let's see if we can actually show another demo. So let's see if we can switch over to my demo laptop once more. Screen sharing just starts and then stops immediately. Let's see if we can get it back. Hopefully it stays around this time.
Yeah, we got your blue background.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Cool. So let's see. Very basic DAX AdventureWorks model. Here I'm going to define a function. Now, I can do that using the Tyndall view or the DAX query view, whatever I want. But let me just do that in the Tyndall view. So since it's warm out here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm going to define a function that allows me to convert to Celsius because, you know, I'm from Europe and this Fahrenheit stuff doesn't make any sense for me. So I'm going to pass in a parameter that is going to be just f. I'm not going to give it a type yet. And the function is going to return f minus 32 times, what was it? F5 divided by 9. And yeah, that looks good. Let's see, what changed? Did I break something again already? That was quick. Unknown keyword. What? Oh, nice. Do we not do it? That's interesting. I am pretty sure I did it correctly, right, this time around. Okay, that is weird. Luckily, I have another file ready here. We can just look at this again. So in the Tyndall view, I can actually, oh, I don't have the one to Celsius, or do I? I have all the conversions from European things too. Oh, here, there you go. So the Fahrenheit, nope, that's not the one I wanted. But you can see how it's being done, right? You can basically say, hey, you know, there's a function called convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. We pass in the temperature, and then we basically, oh, it's 9 divided by 5. I have to do the other way around. And then we return a certain DAX statement. Now, if you look closely at this, it looks a lot like M syntax, and I think Donald is already picking up on that. And that is on purpose, because when we thought about what this syntax would be, we thought about, hey, what is the way people define functions that people are most likely aware of or familiar with, and that is how we define that in Power Query or M. So we basically stole that same idea from them. You have a keyword that tells us that you're indicating that you want to define a function, and then you give us a name, and then you do an equal signs, you give any parameters, could be no parameters, could be any parameters, and then you do this little arrow thingy equals and pointer larger than sign, and then you write your DAX that you want to execute. So once this has been defined, it is inside of your model. You can now use the same functions over and over and over again. So I'm just going to say, going to call this function a little later. So I'm going to copy the name because I'm lazy and I don't want to type it. And then in here, I can just say, you know what, I'm going to define a new measure. And this is going to say, convert 100 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. Yes, there's a red squiggly. That's expected because we haven't done the work yet. And now if I add this, you'll see that this is indeed happily returning 37.78, which of course is as it should be with my European brain. Now, this is a very simple example because of course it only uses a fixed value. There's nothing fancy happening here. It's literally a fixed conversion of 100 to Celsius in this case. So it's a fixed value, but you can also see that you can use this in the context. For example, I have a function here that allows me to convert a date to a epoch value. So let's say I need to convert the date to a numerical representation of the same date. I now have a function that we defined in this model named convert date to epoch. And what I can do is I can just grab the average sales order date from this case. So from context, I'm going to grab that date, and then I'm going to pass that in as the context and then return the result. So if we use this in my matrix over here, you'll see that the average date here has been passed in, the epoch is then returned. So it's not just a fixed thing. It just allows you to add in the context as well. So that's a very quick, very basic demo. You can use this for many other things. For example, if people are using SVGs, you are familiar with writing a lot of SVG syntax into your measures, and you're likely doing that over and over and over again. That is kind of annoying. So what you can do now is you can literally just write these SVGs into your functions and say, you know what, I just want to have a status SVG, and this is how I define the SVG. So it's also decoupling your model from your measures. You're hiding the complicated things on how you actually write all of these interesting things for you, so you have a nice UI. You just basically pass along a status, and based on the status, we actually give you the right SVG with, for example, the right coloring, the right stroke color, the right font weight, etc., and we return the SVG code. The only thing you do is you call that in a measure, you slap it onto your visual here, and you use it to show the SVG. So this allows you to reuse that SVG over and over and over again. And I think I have one more prepared, but I don't know why it's not working. Let's see if this model will collaborate with me. Because there's also a mode function that some people like to use, which allows you to find the most common value in a list. So let's see if we can actually do this. Whoops, I don't need this one. Power BI doesn't have this. Power BI doesn't have a mode function. We have an MOD, but not mode. So it doesn't. We don't have a built-in way of finding the most common value in a list. So let's say you have sales amounts or order quantities. You just want to find, like, what is the most common number of products on an order that people place with us, or what's the most common age or birth date of our customers or clients or whoever. You can use this to calculate that. And yes, of course, you can write this DAX statement and use it in a measure. But if you are in a business that uses mode over and over and over again, you can just define the function once and reuse it. So this is a relatively simple DAX statement. It's slightly more complicated. But what we do here, we can have a function called mode. It accepts two parameters, one called T and one called C. This one actually defines the type. So this, we say this T needs to be a table reference and the C needs to be a column reference. So you do it the other way around, we will tell you not to. You pass in a scalar, we will tell you not to. So this actually says, no, you need to give me a table or a column reference, otherwise this will not work. And then inside of the body over here, we define a frequency table, which uses summarize to calculate the summarization of the count rows of earlier rows in the frequency table, which again is dynamic. You have the table and column separately, and then you can use, you can calculate, for example, a max X on that to calculate the max frequency. We do a filter, and then finally return a max X of those filtered rows. So you can see with T and C, there's a completely reusable and dynamic based and parameterized to reuse. So let's see if this actually goes through. Why is this broken? Did I do something wrong? Expected line type other. That's weird. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Just copy paste problem? That could be interesting. Yeah, it's a copy paste problem. Oh, yikes. Okay, that is strange. Okay. That is probably just an artifact of me just being lazy and copying this and preparing this, so I didn't have to type it all. And now you have to watch me paste in a whole bunch of tabs to get rid of the indenting problems. Sorry about that. Fingers crossed that it will now actually go through.
So is it specific on tabs and doesn't like spaces, and maybe it pasted it as spaces?
Yeah, I think that's what happened. I pasted it from Notepad because I was cheating. So it's likely just that is going to happen. This is a Tyndall thing, right? Like Tyndall is very picky on how you do your indenting. So I think that is what is happening here. This red squiggly is expected because it doesn't know this keyword yet, but AS will happily accept it. So there we go. Whew, victory. Okay, so this went through. So now I have a function in this model called mode, which accepts a table and a column. Okay, so I can now use this function to calculate, let's say, let's see, what do we have? We have square meters. What else do we have? Something else that's interesting to calculate. The weight. Okay, we can try that. I'm completely freewheeling here, so let's try how this works. So I am going to say my measure is most common, let me zoom in, most common product weight, right? So that is going to be mode, not info.model, mode. Again, read quickly because it doesn't know that this exists. I want to calculate the mode of product, and I want to calculate the mode of product weight, I think it was called, right? Did I do it wrong? Product was called weight, yeah. Okay, so let's see what this does. Cannot find name weight. That's interesting. What does this do? Okay. Lots of red squigglies everywhere. That's how you know this is brand new. No errors. So let's see what this does.
And your weight column name has an extra I in it. WEIG. Oh no, it did it. Okay. I thought maybe that was. Oh, I was reading something else.
I think this should work. I'm not. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Look. Yep. So you can see now I have a most common product weight per category in this case. So as you expect, home appliances in our, would be more heavy, right? So, and then audio, apparently we sell lots of like small audio equipment here, maybe cables and stuff like that go under here. So yeah, obviously that would be the most common weight would be less than that, right? The very, very lightweight stuff. So I was now able to even use context to allow me to calculate this mode on the fly. So I just expanded DAX with my own mode calculation that is missing. I don't have to rewrite it every single time. I just call it over and over again, very simply by just saying, hey, calculate mode, give it the parameters, and the two parameters. So this one was a product and the other one was table reference. And with that, I can calculate my mode. So very simple, very powerful. The sky is the limit here. Again, same as with the calendars. It's up to you how you want to use this. It is up to you how you feel like this is useful for your scenario. We are very excited about this because in the future, this would allow you, once this ships, would allow you to, for example, define certain risk type calculations or other things that you as an organization agree with once in a central semantic model, and then say, hey, you know what? Everybody just use this function, so you're always guaranteed to use exactly the same risk model that everybody else is using, or exactly the same calculation that we agreed on everybody would be using, instead of just copy pasting it everywhere. You define it once, call it very simple using one name instead of copy pasting arrows and the complexity of maintaining it in multiple places. So I think that is a pretty cool advancement that we're going to see very soon. This is going to be a little out there. It's not going to be as soon as the calendars. One of the big things is all those red squigglies are definitely signs that we're not done yet. But I wanted to share this and show you that, so it's coming your way, so you can start preparing and thinking about how you can use this to expand your DAX experience and to have more functions that meet your needs in your business and scenario that you're working on. And I think that was just about it as far as in the live demo. I am willing to go, scared to break things because I already broke it over here. It's weird though, that didn't go through here. I don't know what happened. Let me just try that again. Just try this again on the other model. I'm not sure why that model broke. It should just work. Okay, so apparently the other model was fine. Just my little mode thing didn't work. So let's see if that actually works on this one as well. Now, mode, let's say from sales, and I want to have the sales cost. So what is the most common cost for our sales orders? And this does not, oh, that's not a column, sorry. Unit price then. This is actually a measure, so you have to be careful, and this is actually what shows you that it expects a column reference, and now it says, well, I'm expecting cost, but I can't find it because that's a measure. So I'm gonna say unit price. So assuming I didn't make any typos, and yes, the red squiggly are still here, but assuming I didn't make any typos, this should actually tell me that the unit price per, let's say, reseller, business type, or whatever we want to come up with, is indeed, oh, this is kind of stupid example. Maybe costs, maybe do category then. Oops, let me move this around. Okay, that's better, right? So now you see a unit price for each category here. So it's very cool to use this and be able to use this across your models and in the context of your calculations. So with that, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint because I'm afraid I'll break the rest of my demo. And there was a screen share for like a second and then it dropped again. But now I know that I just need to restart it again. And hopefully it sticks around a little longer. Yep.
Yep, we're back.
So what are we planning for DAX UVFs? Well, we're planning IntelliSense support. As you've seen, we don't have that. We don't have any of that yet. There's all red squigglies all over the place. We don't have a way for you to see functions after they are defined. I didn't show that, but we are planning to show them in the Model Explorer so you can see them coming in. We are also planning to have function descriptions as comments, so you can add comments while you're defining your functions, and that should then show up in the IntelliSense as well, right? So when you type a function called calculate, we will show you a 1 or 2 line description of that function that comes from our system. With this, you would be able to describe what this function does. So your users, when they type this mode function, that little text that you put in place would actually show up in that IntelliSense, so they would know what to do with this function. We're also considering more things. Proxy model support is already in, so that should be up in the list of things that we're already doing. So we're already planning to allow you to call a function from another model. So you have one place where you define all these functions and you just call them everywhere else. We're also considering more parameter types, maybe even passing completely new functions, maybe passing constraints, all those interesting things, more advanced scenarios. Optional parameters is something that we're considering doing to say, hey, you know, I have a signature, but you don't have to specify everything. If you don't specify this parameter, I'm going to pick some default. And maybe some overloading would also be a very interesting scenario where you have the same function with the same name, but depending on the type of parameters you specify, you call a different function body. These last 3 items, the last 3 bullets here, are definitely something that we're considering. Again, if you feel like this is important, if you feel like you have a very specific use case for any of these last 3 things and you want us to build this, this is the time to tell us, because this is the time to influence those decisions. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. In summary, what did we do today? Well, we talked about DAX, how it's older than Power BI. Power BI is turning 10. DAX is way older than that, but it's very much still alive and very much evolving. And this year, you can look forward to 2 major improvements, the custom counters and the user-defined functions, both of which I was luckily be able to give you a demo, although it was kind of like a wonky demo maybe, but I was able to give you a demo. And that's how you know it's hot off the press if the person demoing it to you is kind of scared to go further in the demo because of risk of breaking it. So this is where we are. So I'm happy to take any questions at this time as well.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. And if anybody else that wants to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. But the one question that I had, because you're using Tyndall to produce this right now, and you know, knowing that Tyndall exists, is that going to be the long term or maybe the medium term method of entering these rather than having to wait on a UI to come out?
Yeah, right now that's going to be the plan. We don't think that we're gonna like with DAX UDFs, I have a very specific audience in mind, right? We have the more advanced user in mind, the pro user, right? The person,
right.
You know, that has been around and knows and is comfortable writing DAX, right? Like, for example, a Dean here in the call, right? Somebody like that who is comfortable writing their own DAX statement that circumvents our time intelligence functions. Sorry, Dean, for picking on you. We have people like that in mind, right? So I don't think UDFs need a UI to be successful. I think we can do with the Tyndall view and a DAX query view for a long while. I might be wrong, but that's my opening bit. That I think that will be good enough.
I'm a supporter of that, right? I'd rather have it out there, and it is, I think, more of a pro code, where we're defining pro code, you know, or levels of pro code, So so I'm with you there.
So
I'm
the
gonna
custom calendars ones is for sure a different feature, right?
yes.
That needs a UI because we're targeting people that are just onboarding and going like, how do I do time intelligence? Why can I not do week-based time intelligence? Oh, wait,
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah, that would be difficult without a UI, that's for sure.
For sure.
Jack has a question. I'm going to kind of pre-answer it after I say it, but he wants to know, is there anything new coming on Visual Calcs? And Visual Calcs was another subject Jay and I talked about as we were putting this together, but we decided to go down this route. But
Yep.
is there anything quickly you want to share on Visual Calcs?
I mean, Visual Calcs is in an interesting state. I'll be completely honest and transparent. The uptake of Visual Calcs was slower than we hoped for. So we're kind of now in this let's wait and see where this goes mode with Visual Calcs. We have a long list of improvements we want to make, but right now we're pretty happy with where we are, except for one thing that is coming. And I hope that's going to be the cherry on top for a while for Visual Calcs. But I really need more people to use Visual Calcs toward more investment. It is going okay, but it hasn't took off like a rocket as I hoped it would. So for now, we're in this wait and see modus. So if you haven't tried Visual Calcs yet, please try it. Give it a chance. Try it out. See what it feels like. See how it works. It is faster. It is easier to work with than measures in most cases. They have a big downside, which is they're not reusable across visuals, which is by design. That's what makes them simple. However, what is coming is that one of the big things that people were missing in our Visual Calcs is that you couldn't influence the sort order of a calculation. So if you did running sum, you would be always performing that running sum in the sort order of the data on disk. So if you ever try to do a Pareto analysis using a Visual Calc, you can't. You can't, well, of course you can, but you can't use running sum to do that, which is a very simple function to work with. You have to rely on a window function like window with some x to perform this calculation with, which scares a lot of people off. So next month, we're going to add the order by parameter to all Visual Calc exclusive functions. So you'll get a moving average with order by, you're getting a running sum with order by, etc., etc. So that is coming, but that's then just about it for Visual Calcs for a little while, at least for a couple months, before we get back to that to see how people are going to use this new capability.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I remembered seeing something about the order by, and I wasn't sure exactly what state it was in. So,
yep, that is absolutely coming, and it's coming next month, and that will hopefully allow people to be more successful using Visual Calcs because it removes a lot of the boundaries where we see people stop using Visual Calc or struggling with using Visual Calcs because they have to use the window functions, which is for some people very scary, myself included. So with that, you will then be able to just write that order by, and I'm actually seeing if I can make a quick demo of this here.
I think this article I'm looking at, which surprises me that they put it out so early. They put it out in April. This dynamic Pareto analysis in Power BI from SQL BI.
Yep.
They obviously must have had permission to talk because it has the order by mentioned in here, and that's what I was thinking of when you brought that up.
Yeah,
I'll put that in the
probably
chat.
unless they were naughty, probably what they are doing there is actually using a window function
Oh,
and
okay.
not using running sum. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, I
Let me
think
just
yeah, you're right. Window is in here.
yeah.
But
So
then
that's different.
you're gonna make it easier than what we're
Yes.
seeing even here is
Yep.
I think what we could say, right?
Yeah. So let me just show you that real quick. We're going off script here, but hey, it's been a weird day anyway. So let's try that. You see my the screen share was there for a second, and we do it again. Okay, 2 times is a charm. You see this?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
cool. So we now have a Pareto chart, right? So this is literally, I mean, it's not actually a Pareto chart. It has to be it has to have a percentage, but just for quick right? You see a running sum.
It
So
kind of looks like one. Yeah, if you change
yeah,
the
it's not actually a
percentage,
Pareto
yeah.
chart, right? But I can quickly create a Pareto chart if you give me a second. So I have the total quantity by brand. So I can go in here and say, I'm going to calculate a percentage of grand total. So this thing is now using the nice parameter pickers to say, I'm going to collect, I'm going to collapse on brand. Oh, whoops, I'm going to not collapse on brand. I'm going to calculate the total quantity. I'm going to collapse on rows. So this will give me a percentage of grand total. Okay, great. So this will show up, but it doesn't really perform the way I need it to because, well, Contoso is 27, but then Southbridge Video is 14. So if I just add a running sum to this to calculate the percentage of grand total, it won't actually do what I want it to do, right? So if I do running sum, I can just say, hey, you know, running sum on total quantity, it will just, oops, not on the total quantity, percent of grand total, hoping that I actually get a Pareto line. It won't, because if I move this, you'll see it's not a Pareto line at all. It moves all over the place, right?
Right.
Now, the way to solve it today is to say, oh, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do calculate percent of grand total window. Whoops, no, I need to do a sum x actually, not calculate. Sum x percent of grand total window on 0 apps, 1 relative, or is it the other way around? I don't know anymore.
It's one, yeah, what they have in their article is that way, 1 apps and then 0 relative.
Exactly. So
by
this
rows, order by.
Order by, and then what want I do? Total quantity descending, because now that's how I get the correct order by. And I don't think I need anything else. I just need to give it the thing I want to sum, which is the percent of grand total. This is not the hardest DAX ever, but it's also not the simplest one, right? Like I've done this multiple times over and I'm still kind of struggling on how I need to do this. But this should, fingers crossed, this is completely off script, this should work. It doesn't.
I think what you needed was your
No, it does
total
work.
quantity in there rather than percent of grand total.
No, it does work. Look.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Look.
okay.
It does work. So I'm actually calculating the percent of grand total and removing up to 100%. So great. Now, this is not great because if I put my other one back, I actually would prefer the orange line to be able to just use running sum because that's way simpler than doing all of this stuff with sum x and window and blah, 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 blah. So I now am able to do it because there's a sneaky hidden parameter here, which is called order by. And now I can just say, perform this calculation by total quantity descending, similar as I did with the window function, but this is now going to be it. And as soon as I press enter, whoops, these lines start aligning. Let me hide the original one. And now we're looking at the one that was created using running sum. So we now literally just have a very simple way of doing Pareto analysis using order by.
That's sweet.
Yep. And this is just running sum is one of the examples. All of the Visual Calc's built-in functions where it makes sense, like moving average versus like next, first, last, etc. All will get this order by function enabled, so you can then use this to your heart's content and be very flexible with these. So yeah, SQL BI has to rewrite their article.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And then so Jack has kind of a follow-up. How does Microsoft determine the success of a feature and what warrants more investment?
That is a great question. Do you have
a coin
flip
so? or an argument?
No, it's definitely more
it's
more involved
database
than that. It's absolutely more involved than that. We just have certain expectations, and the success on the feature depends on loads of things. It depends on actual how many users we're getting, but also what certain type of users think about it. Like, do we get big customers to adopt to this? Do we get our MVPs to fall in love with these kind of features? So all of those kind of things influence how successful we think a feature is. Visual Calcs is a weird one because it is not a net new feature. It's literally us trying to change people's behavior from measures to Visual Calcs. It's also a weird one because we're not targeting MVPs, we're targeting beginners, we're targeting people that are just onboarding onto this, that are not aware of how DAX works, and we're trying to teach them and slowly bring them along. Like, I've been going around and saying, that visual calcs are the kiddie pool to DAX, right? Instead of throwing you into the deep end with measures, we're going to make it easier for you. But yeah, all of that to say that it's been slower in uptake than we kind of expected and estimated. And if when that happens, then we have conversations about like, is this really worth it still? And it's not going anywhere. That's not what I'm trying to say. But we need more usage, and we need to find more use cases for these. We need more people to use these visual calcs before we continue investing in it anymore, because time is money, and we don't have unlimited money nor time to work on things that people are not wanting to use or are not discovering and or whatever, right? Again, the uptake is there. It has just been slower, way slower than any of us expected and estimated. But it's up. It is up and it's moving, but it's just been, like 3/4 of a year later than we estimated it would be. So the line of adoption is going the right way. It's just slower. So therefore, we've already moved on to other things to focus on for now. And then, once we hit where we were supposed to be, where we estimated we would be, then we can come back to those kind of like investments again. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a sneak peek how those conversations go inside of Microsoft in our team.
Yeah. And then I'm going to add a link. I just added it to the chat, right? I would think the initiative of the user panel that's been starting up, right? And where it's trying to get voices from, like you said, sometimes like a feature like this isn't targeted to the MVPs or the big influencers that go. And I think that's part of what this user panel will probably kind of help get different perspectives in. So if you're interested in talking about, hey, how great a feature is or how bad a feature is or something, sign up for this user panel with the link that I just put in there. And you might have a chance to voice your opinion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for doing that. That's absolutely spot on, Kevin. Thanks for bringing it up. And I think Joseph is also making an interesting comment here. If it's in investing time to build all these features and learn them, is that worth it? The problem is most people forget about AI for a second. Most people cannot describe their need for a report or a chart in one simple sentence to another human being. I have yet to find the first stakeholder in any company that can do that. They can't. So now, exchange a human being for AI. That's not going to make anything better. So we have to learn to express ourselves more succinctly, being more clear for AI to even stand a chance on helping us. So is it worth learning all these features? Maybe not. What is worth is learning how to work with this AI and to be very clear and precise in how you voice what you want. And most people can't do that in one sentence. Like those meetings about which chart do you want? They're like long meetings about exactly which they want and what color and what shape exactly. Those things, nobody can write that down in one sentence. And that's the problem, really. Separately, AI is just going to be a guesser, right? It's never going to be the pilot. It's going to be a co-pilot. It's still you on the ball to make sure you validate the output of the AI, that you test it, that you qualify it, that you check that this is actually what you wanted. So if you get AI output that you cannot read, you should not be using that AI. If you use AI to generate DAX, but you don't know how to read the DAX to qualify and check the work, you are using the wrong tool. You should still know DAX to be able to qualify the output. So please, don't use AI to generate DAX if you don't know what DAX is. So this is also why, for example, using a feature like Visual Calcs is useful, because if you allow your AI to generate visual calcs, at least the DAX it would output is more human readable and more friendly than most of the DAX out there. So the chances that you can understand it and validate it and check it are higher. And you still have to do that regardless of which AI tool you use. It's always on you as the user. As it says, AI can make mistakes. It's on you to validate it. So if you cannot read the programming code, DAX, Python, whatever, that it outputs, you should not be using that AI. Very simple. It's a helper. It's not a replacement. So is it still worth it to learn that? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and it may even be worth more of learning that chart type and figuring out when your users need that chart type, and then in that case, now you go, hey, now I know there's an easier way to produce it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, figure out the business problem you're solving too, because chat will never figure out the business problem you're solving. It's got to be told all of that. So
yeah, it has to be told, right? And then it's onto you to qualify that output and make sure to make sure that the output is correct based on the question you gave it, right? It doesn't mean that it cannot be correct. It could very well be correct, but it's on you to test that before you put that solution out there. Or to put it differently, right? Would you trust a 2.5-year-old to perform surgery on you? Probably not. You probably want somebody to be qualified for that, or at least to have a qualified person in the room while the other trainee is doing something. This is the same thing. This AI is great, but it cannot, and it's not intended to replace you. It's intended to augment and speed up your knowledge. So you use it, but it's onto you to qualify and check what it did.
Yep. Good point.
And that's how it will always be.
Yep, and that's Joseph agrees with you.
Thank
Before we start shutting it down, anybody else have any questions? Raise your hand, throw it in the chat real quick. Otherwise, I think we've caught up on all the questions. Yeah, again, excellent presentation. This was very good. Thank you, Jay, for showing up again. You tend to show up every year and a half to this group, so I appreciate it. So,
well, only when I have something new to share.
yes, exactly. All right, let me go turn the recording off. Stop the recording.